You know that feeling, right? You're about to say a word you know perfectly well, something like schedule or receipt, and you just hesitate for a split second. That little pause, that flicker of doubt, it's something so many Indian English speakers face. And, over time, it creates these little bits of friction in global communication.
It really does.
So our mission in this deep dive is really clear. This is not about saying any accent is wrong. Not at all. Indian English is incredibly rich.
Absolutely.
This is about unlocking a new level of clarity, and with it, a kind of unshakable confidence when you're speaking in an international setting. We're zeroing in on the specific phonetic spots that cause the most trouble.
You can think of it as a translation layer, not a new identity. I mean, Indian English has its own distinct phonology. But if the goal is that seamless interaction, professionally or academically, targeting these high-frequency differences gives you an instant boost.
So where do we start?
We start where the spelling actively fights the sound.
Okay, segment 1. The hidden hurdles. I like it. Let's start with a word that so many of our listeners search for pronunciation help on. Schedule. What's the common hang-up there?
It's a perfect example. The spelling, schedule, often leads to a pronunciation like schedule.
Right.
The thing is, in, say, American or British English, the H is silent and the D and U kind of blend together to make a soft J sound. So you get schedule in the U.S.
Or schedule in the UK.
Exactly. It's one of those immediate clarity markers. When you hear a native speaker say it fast, those middle sounds just get crushed.
It really cleans up the word. Okay, so moving from that, let's talk about the purely silent culprits, the letters we all insist on saying that really shouldn't be there.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How we articulate letters that just don't make a sound. Let's clean up 2 huge ones right now. First up, receipt.
Ah, yes, the dreaded P.
If you're saying receipt, that P is the friction point.
Yeah.
Let's try this. Say it the common way. Receipt.
Receipt.
Now just relax your mouth and say receipt.
Receipt. Wow. Yeah, it's such a relief to just drop it. I feel like I've been fighting my own mouth trying to force that P in.
Exactly. Okay, let's do another one. The word for money you owe. Debt.
With the B.
Yeah, so many speakers pronounce that B. So say debt.
Debt.
And now just let the B disappear. Say debt.
8. It's so much simpler.
And what about that nut? Almond. That L can be pretty strong sometimes.
Oh, right. Almond.
Yeah, but that L is either totally silent or very, very reduced, especially in North America. It's closer to amande.
Amande.
We're basically learning subtraction here. Mastering what not to say is, I think, often more important than mastering what to say.
That's a huge shift in thinking. But it's not only the silent letters. We've got some words where the vowels and the whole structure just feel like a trap.
Well, absolutely. These are words where history just overrules logic.
Okay, give us one.
Let's start with colonel. C-O-L-O-N-E-L.
Right. It looks like it should be colonel.
Logically, yes. But because of centuries of sound changes, the actual pronunciation is kernel.
Like a corn kernel.
Exactly. If you say colonel, you probably won't be understood. It's a complete phonetic curveball.
That it is. And what about the other one from our source material? Epitome.
E-P-I-T-O-M-E.
Yeah.
Reading it cold, you might say epitome, stressing that last syllable. But that E on the end is silent. It's actually pronounced epitome.
With the stress on the pit.
Stress on the second syllable.
Yeah.
A-P-I-T-M-E. Nailing these specific words instantly signals that you're speaking the language naturally, not just, reading it letter by letter.
Okay, so that covers the spelling traps. Now we're moving from letters we shouldn't say to sounds that require totally new mouth mechanics. Let's talk about taming the confusing consonants.
Right.
And we have to start with the big one, the elusive TH.
This is probably the single most important physical habit you can change. The sound is tricky because it requires a tongue placement that might not even exist in many Indian languages.
So walk us through it, the mechanics.
Okay. To get that clear sound, you have to lightly touch your tongue between your upper and lower front teeth.
So you're almost biting your tongue, gently.
Gently, yes. That little bit of protrusion and the friction it creates is the whole mechanism. It feels a little weird, maybe even aggressive at first.
Yeah, like you're sticking your tongue out at the word.
But that friction is everything.
Uh-huh.
Now, once you have that position, there are 2 types of dha. There's the voiced and the unvoiced.
Okay.
For the voiced they, your vocal cords vibrate. You create the buzz. So put a finger on your throat and say a word like this or that. Feel that hum.
Yeah, there's a definite vibration. This, that.
That's the voiced D. Now, for the unvoiced thee, Keep your tongue in the exact same place, but just stop the vibration. Let the air hiss out.
Okay, so no buzzing.
No buzzing, just air, like in thin or thought.
Thin. Oh, I see. Wow. This versus thin. The only difference is that vibration.
And if you can master that, so much communication just snaps into focus.
That's a huge one. But there's another pair that causes so much confusion. W versus V. Why is this one so critical? I mean, people usually understand.
They might understand from context, sure. But confusing them changes the meaning of words completely.
Right.
Saying vest when you mean west or vegetable instead of vegetable, it just makes the listener work harder.
It adds cognitive load.
Exactly. And the fix is all muscular. It's about your lips and teeth.
Okay, so break it down for us. W first.
For the W sound, like in water or wine, it's purely about your lips.
Oh.
They need to be rounded in a small circle, almost like you're about to whistle.
Okay, rounded lips, no teeth.
No teeth involved at all. Now, for the V sound, like in van or vine, your upper teeth have to rest gently on your lower lip.
On the inside.
On the inside of your lower lip, yeah. And the sound vibrates between your teeth and your lip as you exhale.
So lips only for W, teeth and lip for V. Let's try that quick challenge from our material to really feel it.
Okay, let's do it. Say these pairs and focus only on what your mouth is doing. First, wine.
Wine. Rounded lips.
Now, vine.
Vine. Teeth on lip. I can feel the vibration. The difference is huge when you pay attention to it.
Let's try one more common one. Weather.
Weather. Lips.
Versus weather.
Weather. Teeth. That physical awareness is everything.
And that's the goal. Turning a tricky sound into a physical action you can repeat.
Okay, so we've drilled down on individual sounds. Now let's zoom out. Beyond the basics, we need to talk about flow and finesse. This is where articulation stops being a checklist and starts becoming about rhythm and meaning.
Yes, this is where it gets really transformative. And the first big idea here is stress and intonation.
Right, where you put the emphasis.
Exactly. Because in English, misplaced stress doesn't just sound a little off. It can completely change the word's meaning.
We mentioned present the gift versus to present an idea. What's another classic example?
How about desert? If you stress the first syllable desert, you're talking about the dry, sandy place.
Right, the Sahara.
But if you stress the second syllable dessert, you're talking about cake after dinner.
Dessert. The spelling's almost the same, but the meaning is totally different based on that stress.
It's all in the stress. Mastering that is mastering nuance.
And speaking of flow, let's talk about those consonant clusters. You know, those long strings of consonants that are just physically hard to say quickly.
They are. A word like strength, S-T-R-E-N-G-T-H, is a great example.
Yeah.
You have 5 consonants jammed together at the end.
Yeah.
And what often happens is they get simplified, or maybe an extra vowel sound sneaks in to break them up. The key is practicing that bang the cluster without slowing down.
Another one is comfortable. I hear it said with 4 distinct syllables a lot.
C-O-M-F-O-R-T-A-B-L-E. Yeah, 4 syllables.
Yeah.
But the secret to a natural flow is a much shorter 3-syllable pronunciation. Comfortable.
Comfortable.
And this brings us right to the concept that unlocks that native-like rhythm.
The schwa.
The schwa. That's a word you don't hear every day. What is it?
The schwa is the weakest, most neutral vowel sound in English. It's a soft or I sound. And the crucial thing is, it only ever appears in unstressed syllables. Okay, so only in the unimportant parts of a word.
Precisely. English is a stress-timed language. We lengthen the important syllables and we crush the unimportant ones. If you say every vowel with its full sound, you lose that rhythm.
Which raises a really interesting question. How does saying less of a sound actually make you clearer?
Because by reducing those unstressed syllables to a schwa, you make your stress pattern much clearer. You're signaling to the listener which part of the word matters most, and you're matching the sort of internal music of the language.
Okay, give us a couple more everyday examples where the schwa makes a real difference.
Let's take chocolate. You often hear chocolate, 3 syllables. But the natural flow is just 2. Chocolate.
Chocolate, right.
We reduce that middle vowel almost to nothing. Another one is business. It's not business, it's 2 syllables.
Business.
When you reduce those unstressed syllables, you instantly sound more conversational, like you're speaking, not reading every single letter from a page.
That's a powerful idea. It shifts the whole goal from sounding perfect to sounding natural, which is actually clearer.
That's it, exactly. So the question is, how do you make this practical? How can you start today?
The actionable power-up.
Right. First, practice active listening, but with a specific goal. Listen for how fluent speakers say just the words we've covered: schedule, debt, the two-syllable business. Don't listen for the meaning. Listen for that crushing of the unstressed syllables.
And then there's physical practice.
Yes. For Indian English speakers, one great target is the R sound. Indian English often has a more rolled R. So when you're shadowing listening and repeating, focus on a softer R, especially at the ends of words. It makes a huge difference.
Shadowing is so effective.
It is. And the second thing is to record yourself. Use your phone. Say those minimal pairs, wine versus vine, this versus thin. Then play it back and compare it to a native speaker's version. The feedback is immediate.
We should also mention there are some really great apps and online tools for this. They can give you visual feedback on your tongue and lip placement, which is so helpful for sounds like the or V.
Great point.
So wrapping this all up, what's the core message for you, the person listening? I think it's that small, consistent effort, mastering the silent P today, nailing vine versus wine tomorrow. It leads to these huge gains in confidence and clarity.
It's all about building that muscular memory. And here's a final thought to take with you. When you really think about it, this work isn't about achieving phonetic perfection. It's more about achieving a kind of acoustic empathy.
Acoustic empathy, I like that.
It's about choosing to make these small mechanical shifts, the tongue for the lips for the breath, not to change who you are, but to bridge that communication gap. It's so that your ideas, which are already brilliant, can be heard effortlessly anywhere in the world. It's an investment in being fully heard.